My name is Leah Sanderson. I'm 31 years old, and the day my grandmother was buried is the day everything I thought I knew about my family shattered. At her funeral, in front of about 60 people, her lawyer handed me a faded savings book with her name on it. Before I could even open it, my father snatched it from my hands, glanced at the balance, laughed, and threw it onto her casket as if it were trash. "It's useless," he said loudly. "Let it stay buried." His wife smirked, his stepson filmed it, and no one spoke. I remember the dirt still fresh on the grave, the wind pulling at our coats, and the silence that felt heavier than grief. I stepped forward without saying a word, knelt beside the grave, and picked the book up carefully, brushing off the soil like it mattered, because somehow I felt it did. I drove straight to the bank, still in my black funeral dress, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. When the clerk entered the account number, her expression changed instantly. She went pale, stood up, and told me not to leave because she needed to call the police. That moment was the beginning of a truth my grandmother had been quietly building for years, a truth that would expose my father in ways I never imagined. Before that day, my life had been shaped by small, quiet routines centered around my grandmother, Ruth. Every Sunday for 3 years, I visited her modest home, a small white house with peeling paint and a garden she lovingly maintained. My father always said she barely had anything, that she was struggling, but I never saw her that way. She was careful, not poor. She lived simply, not desperately. I brought groceries, cleaned, managed her medications, and sat with her for hours while she told me stories about my mother, the only person who ever did. Growing up, after my mother died when I was 10, my father tried for a while, then slowly drifted away into a life shaped by appearances and control, especially after he remarried. I was never truly part of that household again. I paid bills, worked hard, and built a life for myself, but I was always treated like a burden. When my grandmother got sick, I didn't hesitate. I reduced my work hours and took care of her full-time, even though it drained my savings and eventually forced me back into my father's house, where nothing had changed. Meanwhile, my father visited only a handful of times and always asked the same question, whether he could manage her finances. She always refused. At the time, I didn't understand the tension in her voice or the fear in her hands after those calls. I do now. Months before her death, I noticed strange things, withdrawals that didn't make sense, conversations she had in hushed tones, and a small brown book she guarded carefully. One night, she made me promise that when she died, I would take that book and never let my father have it. I promised without understanding why. The day she died, I found that book in her desk, along with a note telling me to take it to the bank and ask for someone specific. At her funeral, my father unknowingly revealed exactly why she had done that. What looked like a worthless savings book was actually a key one she knew he would discard without a second thought. At the bank, I learned that the account was linked to an irrevocable trust worth over $2 million, with me as the sole beneficiary. My grandmother, who lived in a small house and wore the same cardigans for years, had quietly built a financial fortress over decades through careful saving, investing, and planning. More importantly, she had designed it to be untouchable, especially by my father. But the money wasn't the real shock. The real shock came when the bank revealed that my father had used a revoked power of attorney to withdraw $40,000 from her accounts months before her death. It was fraud. It was a felony. And it explained everything: his obsession with her finances, his desperation, and his reaction at the funeral. What followed was a storm of denial, manipulation, and pressure. My father tried to contest the trust, claiming I had influenced my grandmother, while my stepmother called me pretending to care, urging me to do the right thing and share the money. Relatives reached out, some gently, some not, suggesting I split it to keep the peace. My stepbrother mocked the situation online, even posting the video of my father throwing the book on the grave, not realizing he was documenting evidence that would later be used against him. But my grandmother had anticipated all of it. She had records, legal safeguards, and even witnesses. Her lawyer confirmed that she had been fully mentally competent when creating the trust and that she had deliberately structured everything to protect me and expose any wrongdoing. When the truth started spreading through our small town, everything changed. The image my father had carefully built began to crumble. Clients stopped calling him, people distanced themselves, and the same community that once admired him began to question everything. At a Thanksgiving gathering, he tried one last time to publicly pressure me into sharing the money, framing it as fairness and family unity. But that time, I didn't stay silent. I told the truth about who had shown up for my grandmother, about the fraud, about the revoked power of attorney, and I placed the evidence on the table for everyone to see. The room fell silent, and for the first time, my father had nothing to say. Eventually, he withdrew his legal challenge and faced criminal charges, resulting in probation and restitution. I didn't celebrate it. It wasn't victory, it was consequence. After everything settled, I received a letter my grandmother had written to me. In it, she explained that the money wasn't a reward but a head start, a way to give me the life my mother couldn't. She told me not to hate my father, but not to sacrifice myself for him either. That message stayed with me. I used the trust responsibly but bought a modest home near hers, continued working as a nurse, and built a stable life. I didn't chase luxury. I chose security. Every Sunday, I visit her grave, just like I used to visit her house. I bring flowers, sit quietly, and talk to her. Because in the end, the most valuable thing she gave me wasn't the money, it was proof that someone believed I was worth protecting, even when others didn't.